In a world consumed by steel and fire, the strongest warriors of the North are facing their final stand. Aiden's father roars a challenge to the traitors who have surrounded their family. Young Aiden watches from behind a rock, his small hands trembling at the sight of the slaughter. His mother frantically completes the ancient incantation, her voice trembling with the weight of the spell. A pillar of blinding light erupts from the snow, tearing a hole through the fabric of reality. With a final tearful push, Aiden is sent into the portal to a place beyond the stars. Become strong, his father's voice echoes, for only the strong can protect what they love. 10 years pass in the blink of an eye within the peaceful streets of a modern city. Chao Lu Kang is now a senior at GNL High School, known for his quiet demeanor and massive frame. In a dark alleyway behind the school, a group of bullies corners a student from a wealthy family. The leader of the bullies mocks Gintae Kim, demanding his expensive watch and wallet. Gintae warns them that his friend is coming, but the bullies only laugh at his threat. Suddenly, the brick wall beside the bully leader shatters under the force of a single fist. Chao Lu Kang emerges from the dust, his presence filling the narrow space with an aura of power. The bullies panic as they realize they are facing someone who isn't entirely human. With a single effortless motion, Chao Lu sends the leader flying across the alley. After the scuffle, Chao Lu and Gintae walk away as if nothing had happened. Gintae asks if he is truly human, but Chao Lu only flinches and looks away. It has been 10 years since the portal, and the barbarian blood still burns in his veins. At home, Chao Lu finishes his 6th bowl of rice, much to his grandfather's delight. The old man who took him in treats him like his own flesh and blood. His grandfather asks why he refuses to become a professional athlete despite his talent. Chao Lu knows that participating in human sports would be a violation of fair play. A barbarian is born to be a warrior, not a performer in a human ring. The evening news suddenly broadcasts a series of horrific incidents in a nearby district. Over 100 people have died, and the government is baffled by the strange creature sightings. Chao Lu recognizes the creature on the screen. It is a beast from the world he left behind. He decides it is time to face the past and protect his new home from the coming storm. He hitches a ride with Gintae, who is driving his father's expensive luxury car. They arrive at the entrance of a long tunnel, where a massive crowd has already gathered. A man from a private corporation approaches Chao Lu, impressed by his sheer physical size. He offers him a job as a manual laborer in the new planet colonization project. Chao Lu tears the business card to shreds, refusing to be a mere worker for anyone. A barbarian is a warrior, and his strength is not for hire as cheap labor. Suddenly, a massive black sphere appears in the middle of the highway, distorting space and time. System windows flash in the air, notifying everyone that the Doomsday exam has begun. The world as they know it is ending, and the only salvation lies within the portal to Nova. While others scream in fear, a wild smirk spreads across Chao Lu's face. He has been waiting for a reason to unleash his true power for over a decade. But as they step through the light, a massive shadow looms within the swirling depths of the portal. A massive, swirling black sphere of pure shadow pulses at the entrance of the Yong-Amam tunnel. Glowing blue holographic windows materialize in the air, flickering with cryptic text. The text announces the commencement of the Doomsday exam for the inhabitants of Earth. People scream as a blinding pillar of light erupts from the center of the dark portal. Chao Lu Kang and Gintae Kim suddenly find themselves standing in the middle of a dense alien forest. Gintae clutches his head and yells about the fate of his father's expensive car. A new system window instructs them to obtain a goblin coin to unlock class advancement. Rustling leaves and high-pitched cackling echo from the surrounding bushes. Small, green-skinned creatures with jagged blades emerge from the shadows in a circle. Chao Lu takes a deep breath, feeling the latent barbarian blood in his veins begin to boil. A predatory smirk spreads across Chao Lu's face as he realizes the time for peace has ended. He lunges forward with explosive speed, shattering the ground beneath his feet. A single heavy blow from his fist sends the lead goblin flying into a massive tree trunk. He moves like a whirlwind, crushing the small monsters with sheer physical dominance. The adrenaline rush of combat makes the young barbarian feel more alive than ever before. As the last goblin dissolves into digital pixels, a gleaming golden coin falls to the grass. Chao Lu picks up the non-transferable currency, watching the notification qualify him for Nova citizenship. Gintae catches up, his face bruised and swollen from a previous scuffle with the crowds. Chao Lu warns his friend that in this new world, strength is the only path to survival. they encounter two soldiers in tactical gear who are searching for their lost supplies. The soldiers explain that Nova is a primitive world that humanity must rebuild from scratch. Hearing that the real challenge awaits on the planet Nova only serves to fuel Chaolu's excitement. Late at night, Chaolu drags Ginte toward a mysterious tower glowing with static energy. An elite sorcerer goblin stands atop the spire, brandishing a staff crackling with lightning. A massive bolt of lightning strikes Chaolu directly, engulfing his muscular frame in white electricity. To the goblin's horror, the young man continues to climb, his skin scorched but his spirit unbroken. Chaolu reveals that he has inherited the magical resistance of his great sorceress mother. He releases a surge of his own latent power, causing the entire tower to explode in splinters. Among the debris, he finds a glowing golden orb that permanently increases his magical ability. Ginte stares at his friend, wondering if Chaolu is even human after surviving such a blast. A red system notification warns that the boss monsters have arrived in the testing zone. A gargantuan junior ogre emerges from the trees, crushing the earth with every heavy step. Chaolu stands his ground, dwarfed by the beast but looking up with a predator's focus. He catches the ogre's downward swing with his bare hands, the shockwave shattering the nearby ground. The beast roars and kicks Chaolu back, sending him skidding through the thick underbrush. Realizing the ogre's strikes are simple, Chaolu slides between its massive legs to strike. He grabs the creature's arm and uses its own massive weight to slam it into the dirt. Jumping high, he lands a barrage of crazed punches directly onto the monster's bleeding maw. The junior ogre disperses into light, leaving behind a mysterious black orb for Chaolu to claim. But as they prepare to step through the final portal, a distant, ancient roar shakes the entire continent. The echoes of the ancient roar still vibrated through the air as Chaolu stepped back into the ruins of Neo Sol. He knew that surviving the system meant more than just individual strength, he needed a pack. With a voice like grinding stones, he declared the birth of the Ironhead mercenary tribe to the weary survivors. The name was a tribute to the unyielding skull of the barbarians from his home world. However, the city's outskirts were plagued by the bandit king Hojang, a man who preyed on the weak. Chaolu refused to let another tribe suffer the betrayal he had experienced as a child. He gathered his first dozen warriors, men who had seen his power and chose to follow. The march toward Hojang's territory was silent and filled with the scent of impending blood. They arrived at the Junkyard Fortress just as the sun reached its zenith. Without a word of negotiation, Chaolu swung his axe and shattered the main gate into splinters. Bandit sentries scrambled to their feet, reaching for jagged blades and rusty guns. Chaolu moved like a whirlwind of steel, cutting through the first wave with ease. Hojang emerged from his trailer, his single eye widening at the sight of the barbarian giant. Chaolu pointed his gore-stained axe at the bandit king, demanding his total surrender. Hojang spat on the ground and lunged forward with a desperate, heavy strike. The barbarian didn't even dodge, instead catching the jagged blade with his bare, calloused hand. With a guttural roar, Chaolu headbutted the bandit king, snapping his nose instantly. As Hojang collapsed, the remaining bandits dropped their weapons in sheer terror. The Ironhead tribe had secured their first victory and a mountain of supplies. Among the bandits' loot, Chaolu found an ancient, pulsating key made of black bone. The system interface flickered to life, identifying it as the key to the Shadowgrave dungeon. Realizing this was a chance to grow stronger, Chaolu decided to enter the dungeon alone. The air inside the Shadowgrave was freezing and smelled of wet earth and rot. Skeleton warriors clad in rusted mail rose from the floor to block his path. Chaolu smashed through the brittle bones, his barbarian strength turning them to dust. He pushed deeper into the labyrinth, following the strange pull of the bone key. He finally reached a massive chamber where a great lich sat upon a throne of skulls. The lich cast a spell of binding, wrapping Chaolu in ethereal chains of shadow. Chaolu's barbarian blood boiled, his muscles bulging until the shadow chains began to crack. He lunged across the chamber in a single, earth-shaking leap. The axe cleaved the lich's staff and its ribcage in one continuous, devastating motion. As the lich vanished, the dungeon's oppressive atmosphere finally lifted. At the foot of the throne lay a shimmering scroll that seemed to contain a world within it. When he touched it, a massive holographic map of Earth and Nova erupted into the air. This was the Secret World Map, a legendary item showing every resource and boss location. Chaolu realized he now held the blueprint for total domination over this new world. He returned to the surface, finding the Ironhead tribe working together to fortify the junkyard. They had transformed a place of fear into a beacon of hope for Neo Seoul. But his work was far from over. The map showed a looming threat in the east. Far across the wasteland, a massive military convoy was already moving toward his position. Among them, a high-ranking general looked at a file with Chao Lu's high school photo on it. The world was watching the Barbarian King, and not all of them were allies. A sudden system notification pinged in his mind, warning of a territorial invasion starting in 3 hours. Chao Lu gripped his axe as the first sound of a helicopter blade cut through the silence of the night. The rhythmic thumping of the helicopter blades grew deafening as the aircraft descended toward the Ironhead base. Chao Lu tightened his grip on his axe, his barbarian instincts sensing the approach of a disciplined force. The helicopter touched down on the reinforced concrete, kicking up a whirlwind of dust and gravel. A tall man in a crisp military uniform stepped out, his chest decorated with medals that caught the moonlight. General Park extended a hand, though his eyes scanned the scars on Chao Lu's muscular arms. He explained that the human resistance needed a vanguard to reclaim the southern territories from the encroaching system monsters. Chao Lu realized that allying with the military would provide the Ironhead tribe with much-needed supplies and reconnaissance. By dawn, a massive convoy of armored vehicles and Ironhead warriors moved toward the edge of the desert. The heat of the newly formed wasteland shimmered, hiding the dangers beneath the shifting sands. Giant sandworms erupted from the earth, attempting to swallow the lead tanks whole. Chao Lu leapt from the lead vehicle, his axe slicing through the air with the weight of a falling mountain. He buried the blade into the worm's head, releasing a fountain of neon blue monster blood. The soldiers watched in awe as the barbarian youth handled threats that would usually require an airstrike. They pushed further south until the silhouette of a golden pyramid appeared on the horizon. This was the Holy Pyramid, a system-generated dungeon that acted as the anchor for the regional monsters. An army of stone mummies stood guard at the entrance, their eyes glowing with an ancient, cursed fire. Chao Lu signaled the Ironhead warriors to form a wedge formation, leading the charge personally. The clash of steel against stone echoed across the dunes as the two armies collided. Chao Lu spun his axe in a wide arc, shattering 3 stone guardians with a single, brutal rotation. He noticed that the stone mummies were being powered by a central crystal atop the pyramid. Without hesitation, he began scaling the steep, smooth sides of the ancient structure. Gargoyles detached themselves from the walls, diving down to knock him off the ledge. Chao Lu punched a gargoyle mid-flight, his fist cracking its jaw into 1,000 pieces. He reached the summit, sweat dripping from his brow as he faced the pyramid's champion. A giant Anubis-like warrior stood there, wielding a staff that pulsed with dark energy. The champion let out a roar that shook the very foundation of the desert. Chao Lu grinned, his barbarian blood boiling at the prospect of a worthy opponent. The two warriors exchanged blows that sent shockwaves through the air, cracking the stone beneath them. Chao Lu feinted a high strike, then dropped low to sweep the champion's legs. As the champion stumbled, Chao Lu drove his axe directly into the power crystal embedded in its chest. The Anubis warrior dissolved into sand, and the system announced the liberation of the Holy Pyramid. Among the loot that manifested, a heavy iron whistle caught Chao Lu's attention. He blew into the whistle, and a haunting, metallic neigh echoed through the valley below. From the shadows of the pyramid's base, a creature made of iron and muscle emerged. This was the iron-striped horse, a legendary mount capable of traversing any terrain at incredible speeds. Chao Lu descended the pyramid and approached the beast, which bowed its head in recognition of its new master. General Park arrived with the cleanup crew, looking at the conquered pyramid with a mixture of fear and admiration. For a moment, the alliance felt solid, as if the humans and the barbarian could truly coexist in this new world. However, as the moon began to rise, a strange crimson tint started to bleed into the night sky. A system notification flashed across everyone's vision. The blood moon event begins in 60 seconds. From the distance, the low guttural bellows of thousands of minotaurs began to shake the ground beneath the camp. Chao Lu mounted his iron-striped horse and looked toward his home, realizing the Ironhead castle was right in the path of the horde. Chao Lu dug his heels into the flanks of the iron-striped horse as the horizon began to bleed a deep crimson. High above, the moon was being swallowed by a shadow that pulsed like a dying heart. The system notification chimed in his mind, warning of the Great Lunar Siege event. He could see the silhouettes of his men on the ramparts of Ironhead Castle, looking like ants against the rising tide of darkness. From the woods emerged the first of the monsters, their heavy hooves shaking the very foundation of the earth. Chaolu let out a guttural roar that echoed across the plains, challenging the beasts before he even reached the gates. He leapt from his horse while it was still moving, his massive axe already swinging in a deadly arc. The blade connected with the lead minotaur's chest, spraying thick black blood across the dry grass. "Hold the line, you bastards!" he shouted to the mercenaries watching from above. More minotaurs poured from the shadows, their numbers seemingly endless under the cursed sky. Chaolu felt the weight of a stone hammer crash against his shoulder, sending him skidding across the dirt. He spat out blood, his barbarian instincts screaming at him to get back up. Suddenly the world around him began to warp, the sounds of battle fading into a strange rhythmic chanting. He found himself standing in a field of white ash, identical to the ruins of his childhood village. A small boy with the same eyes as his own sat weeping amidst the smoldering remains of a hut. This was the day the elders were slaughtered, the day Aiden died and Chaolu was born. A spectral shadow of a tribal traitor materialized, holding a blood-stained blade toward the child. Chaolu rushed forward, but his feet felt like they were sinking into deep, cold mud. "You couldn't save them then, and you can't save your new home now," the shadow hissed in his father's voice. Chaolu gripped his axe so hard his knuckles turned white, refusing to let the nightmare take hold. "I am no longer that helpless child," he whispered, his voice gaining the strength of a mountain. He swung his axe, not at the shadow, but at the very ground beneath his feet, shattering the illusion. Back in the real world, a pillar of light erupted from Chaolu's body, throwing the Minotaur's back in a tidal wave of force. His armor had changed, now etched with glowing runes of the ancient kings he had once feared. With a speed that defied his massive frame, he vanished, and reappeared behind a group of chargers. Heads flew and bodies were cleaved in two as he danced through the horde like a storm of steel. The mercenaries on the walls cheered, their morale restored by the sight of their invincible leader. But as the last of the lesser Minotaurs fell, the earth groaned with a far deeper sound. A Minotaur lord, 3 times the size of the others, crawled out from the underworld's depth. It carried a flail made of spiked iron balls, each the size of a small car. Chaolu wiped the sweat from his brow, feeling the strain of his recent evolution. He knew his mana was running low, and he only had one more high-tier skill in him. The Lord swung the flail, destroying the castle's outer gatehouse with a single, thunderous blow. Chaolu ran up the falling debris, using the tumbling stones as stepping stones toward the monster's head. He activated his new skill, Wrath of the Ascended Ancestor, and his axe doubled in size. He slammed the blade down onto the Lord's skull, creating a shockwave that cleared the clouds from the sky. As the giant beast dissolved into blue particles, the red moon finally began to fade back to white. Chaolu stood in the silence, his new armor smoking from the intensity of the power he had channeled. He looked down at his palm and saw a mark that wasn't there before, an imperial crest of the fairy kingdom. Before he could process what it meant, a messenger bird with silver feathers landed on his shoulder, carrying a summons that would change the fate of Earth forever. The silver-feathered messenger bird took flight, leaving Chaolu Kang standing atop the battlements of Ironhead Castle with a new weight on his shoulders. He turned to his sub-leaders, Ginte and Junhuan, explaining that the summons came from the Imperial Fortress regarding the recent alien incursions. The mission was clear: he would represent the human factions of Neo-Sol to negotiate a peace treaty with the emerging alien empires of Nova. Chaolu mounted Sonata, his massive iron-striped horse, and led a small, elite guard toward the border of the unknown territories. After days of travel, the group arrived at the base of a floating mountain where the crystalline spires of the Imperial Fortress pierced the clouds. At the gates they were met by a contingent of high elf knights clad in shimmering silver plate, led by an elite fairy knight named Artia. Artia looked down at the barbarian with disdain, questioning if a mere beast from Earth thought himself worthy of an audience with the Baron. Chaolu simply smirked, his barbarian blood boiling with the thrill of a potential challenge against such refined arrogance. Before the diplomats could speak, Artia drew her blade in a flash of light, demanding Chaolu prove his strength in a trial by combat. Chaolu drew his glowing red axe, the ground cracking beneath his feet as he intercepted the fairy knight's impossibly fast thrust. Artia moved like a gust of wind, her feet barely touching the floor as she unleashed a barrage of mana-infused strikes. A thin cut appeared on Chaolu's cheek, the fairy's blade bypassing his ogre skin through the sheer precision of her magic. He realized that speed alone would not win this fight, and he began to channel the spirits of the spirit realm he had recently befriended. 4 spirit dragons manifested around his axe, their spectral roars echoing through the marble halls of the fortress. Artia's eyes widened as she recognized the ancient barbarian sorcery, a power her people had thought long extinct. With a thunderous roar, Chaolu swung his axe, creating a shockwave of spiritual force that shattered Artia's magical barrier. The elite fairy knight was thrown back against a marble pillar, her rapier clattering to the floor as she gasped for air. Chaolu lowered his weapon, the glowing dragons dissipating as he stood over his defeated opponent with a look of stoic respect. He declared that strength was not a tool for oppression, but a bridge to unite those who wished to survive the Doomsday. Baron Callan, the master of the fortress, stepped onto the balcony and clapped, intrigued by this new force of nature. The Baron admitted that the Empire had underestimated Earth's potential and invited Chaolu to a banquet of parley. However, during the meal, the Baron revealed that his peace required Earth to become a vassal state of the Empire. Chaolu's grip tightened on his fork until the silver bent like wet clay under his barbarian power. He stood up, slamming his hands onto the table and shattering the fine mahogany with a deafening crack. "I did not come here to sell my people," he growled, his voice vibrating the very air in the room. The Baron's guards rushed forward, but Artea stepped between them, her gaze lingering on Chaolu with newfound doubt. She questioned her own loyalty to a Baron who valued trade more than honor and lives. Chaolu offered a different path, an alliance of equals where everyone fought for the survival of Nova, not for the greed of kings. The Baron sneered, calling the idea a peasant's dream, and ordered his hidden mages to strike. Purple lightning erupted from the corners of the room, but Chaolu used his golem regeneration to shrug off the pain and charge. He grabbed a marble pillar and ripped it from its foundation, swinging it like a club to scatter the mages. Seeing his defenses crumble, the Baron attempted to flee through a secret portal behind his throne. Chaolu hurled his massive axe, the red blade spinning through the air and embedding itself in the portal frame, short-circuiting the magic. The Baron fell to his knees as Chaolu approached, the shadow of the giant warrior looming over him like an inescapable judgment. Artea stepped forward once more, but this time she knelt before Chaolu, offering her sword as a token of her defection. "The Empire has lost its soul," she said softly, "and I would rather serve a king who leads from the front." Chaolu accepted her oath, realizing that his strength had finally begun to draw the respect of those beyond his own kind. He spared the Baron but stripped him of his title, declaring the Imperial Fortress a neutral zone for all survivors of the system. As the sun rose over the spires, humans, elves, and barbarians stood together, watching the beginning of a new era of unity. Chaolu looked toward the distant horizon where Earth lay, knowing that while the apocalypse was far from over, he finally had the strength to protect his home and his tribe. With Artea and his mercenaries at his side, the barbarian king set off into the wilds of Nova, ready to forge a future where the strong served the weak.